all see that these things in NVC, in nonviolent communication, we call all these things that are universal to human beings, we call them needs. And there, hopefully you can see in front of you is a list of not all the human needs on the planet, but they are very many of the needs that are there. And as you look on that, tell me if you see anywhere where it says money on that list. Can you see money anywhere in that list? I see a couple of people shaking their head. Yeah, so in nonviolent communication, we do not consider money a need. We rather consider it a strategy, a way of getting needs met. Now, it's a very useful way of getting needs met in our current way of functioning in the world. But if I have, $1 million US and I bury it in my backyard and I keep it buried there for the next 30 years, how much is that going to contribute to my wonderful life? Not so much, right? It's only when I actually put it into use to get other needs met. Like, it could be security, safety, it could be, other of these needs met, that it really helps. And we'll look at that in a few minutes, a bit more about strategies and the difference between strategies and needs, because that's a very important difference in nonviolent communication. But as you look at this list of human needs, I'm guessing there's none of the needs on here where you go, oh, play, no, forget it. I don't want to ever have that in my life. I don't want it, or, food, yeah, I don't want that. Or purpose, mastery. We all want those things in our life. The more that they're in our life, the more our life seems to have that fulfillment, that joy, that, sense of, oh, wow, it's so wonderful to be alive. So what nonviolent communication suggests is that this is a way of connecting between human beings, even when they seem to be coming from polar opposite ends of perceiving some experience, some event, some ideas of what we need to do to move forward, that we can begin to move towards the middle ground by understanding what needs of theirs they're trying to meet by taking this particular action, by saying these words, or what needs are not met when I say I want to do this and they don't agree with it. What needs of theirs might not be met, what needs I'm trying to meet. So let's take a few minutes to look at this a little bit deeper. So one of the things that nonviolent communication suggests, and it seems to be playing out here because I haven't heard anyone say, no, I don't want any of these needs met. I don't like these needs, I don't want them. So they do seem to be universal. Another thing that nonviolent communication suggests is that needs are the primary motivators of human behavior. They're the primary motivators of human behavior. So another way of saying that is that no matter what a human being is doing or saying or not doing, we can try to understand those actions, those words, that silence in terms of what needs of theirs they're trying to meet by doing those things or saying those words. And that when we do that, we can better understand them because we have the same needs. So let's just begin playing with that a little bit. So right now, I want you to all think of one thing that you did today. So some action that you took, some words that you said to another person, a family member. But just recall one thing. It doesn't matter, it can be anything at all. But just think of one action that you took today. Okay, and then I'll put that list of needs up, and I want you to see if you can identify one or two or three needs of yours that were met by the action that you did. Okay, so, and I'll give an example from my life just to start things off. So it's still morning here, but earlier this morning when I got up, I went out and I exercised. I did some exercise. What needs of mine do you think might have been met by me doing that? Maybe we can have it verbally since we're on the screen sharing. It'll be hard to see the chat. Now, let's do another little step of the exercise. Now I want you to think of something you saw somebody else do, or words that they said to you, if you want to choose that. And then see if you can make a guess of what needs they were trying to meet by doing that action or saying those words to you. So just think of something that you saw someone else do or heard them say, and then what needs they were trying to meet by doing that. You connected to the needs underneath what that person said or did that you weren't liking. Did anything shift for you in connecting to those needs? Anything change or shift? And if so, what changed or shift for you? I want to look at just one other piece of learning around that I think will be helpful to keep in mind in relation to nonviolent communication. And that came up with this idea of money, but it can come up in many other forms as well. That we want in nonviolent communication, we want to be really clear the difference between what a need is, these things that we've been talking about that are essential to our well-being, and the strategy, which in nonviolent communication, a strategy is the way that we meet needs. So as I was suggesting earlier, money itself is not a need because it won't make me happy if I just have it buried down, in the backyard and never do anything with it. But it's a very useful strategy. It's a way I can meet a lot of different needs. And so I want to just take a moment to look at that difference and be a bit more clear about the difference between the need and the strategy. Because, for example, how many of you have ever heard yourself saying, I need you to do blah, 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 blank, whatever it is. I need, my sister to do this differently. I need my mother to act differently. I need my boss to, respect me or whatever it is. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like related like that, where I need you? Someone else, yes. I'm thinking, yeah. So let's take a look at the, sorry, say again.
Too much sometimes.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's a way I think many of us, certainly I was trained to think that, I feel because of you. And so my way to, if I don't like how I'm feeling, the way I can change that is by trying to get you to change what you're doing, what you're saying. I don't know about you, but it's not been so successful for me to get other people to change. Especially when I'm trying to force them to change or make them change. And it's also a very slippery slope towards violence in some form, in my experience. But let's take a moment to look at this difference between needs and strategies to help make that a bit more clear. So I'm going to share my screen here. So we have to call upon Plato. And in this case, it's not the ancient philosopher Plato, but rather Plato as an acronym, at least in the English language, that each letter of Plato stands for something that helps us see the difference between what is a strategy and what is a need. Okay, the first thing, the P in Plato, stands for person. So we started talking about that. Needs, needs do not have specific people in mind. So I don't need my sister or my daughter to do this. I might have a need for support. And my preferred strategy would be that my, daughter cleans up her mess, or that, my wife gives me a hug right now. That might meet my need for support. But the need is support. The strategy is, You know, my daughter picks up her things, or my wife gives me a hug, or, you know, whatever it might be. You know, my boss, you know, offers to help me on this work project. That would meet a need for support. But there are many ways I can meet that need for support. And here's the important thing about needs versus strategies is that when we're at the need level, this need for support, there are many ways I can get it met. For example, I might have a need for companionship. Okay, I could, you know, ask my wife, you know, will you sit with me for a while? I could call up a friend and say, hey, do you want to go to the movies together, go for coffee together? You know, I could go hug a tree. Maybe that is a need for companionship, just to be with nature. I could play with a pet if I have a pet. So there are many ways we can get our needs met, and those are all different strategies. So needs keep things more open. So needs do not involve specific people. All right. They also do not, you know, involve specific locations. You know, I need to go to Hawaii right now, or I need to go to the mountains right now. You know, I need to go to the beach right now. No, those are strategies that might help meet some needs for peace and ease, relaxation. Actions, no specific actions. So, you know, I often give this example when my daughter was young. You know, when she came home from school, she would drop her clothes, her books, her hat, her socks, everything, just wherever they fell. And they would stay there forever and ever. You know, but I don't have a need for my daughter to pick up her stuff. I have a need for order or for beauty in my environment. And maybe one of my preferred strategies is for her to pick those things up and put them somewhere else. But there are many other ways I can get that need met. I can do it. My wife could do it. We could hire a maid to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So no actions are part of needs. Specific times and specific objects, or all these things are not part of needs. But they are very much a part of the way we get needs met. So try to keep that difference in mind. If you notice yourself thinking, I need her to do this, I need him to do that, you know, or I need this action to happen, I need, these people to do this for me, then we're talking about strategies, we're not talking about needs. And what nonviolent communication suggests, and again, we could go into long, philosophical debate, but we're not going to do that here. Just try it out for yourself. What nonviolent communication suggests is that needs are never in conflict. Strategies are in conflict. And, we may come to places where we can't figure out how do we care for this need of yours and that need of mine. We may be, dumbfounded to figure out a strategy that could meet both those needs at the same time. But in NVC, we suggest that needs are never in conflict. So you can play that, keep that in mind and just play with it yourself and see if that starts to ring true or not for you. Usually when we get stuck where it seems like we're, butting heads or we're at very different ends of things is because it's important to us. There's something, in nonviolent communication, we'd say there's some really big needs that are, we're worried aren't going to get met or haven't been met by what was said or done. So there's real importance to us in, what's happening. And so it often brings up emotions in us, strong emotions. And those emotions are very useful because they let us know something important is happening inside of us. But they can also make it really difficult to even care what's going on for the other person, or even not even want to understand. And that can even happen certainly with people we say we love, but in certain moments we can feel like, I don't care what is going on with you, I just want this, and so one of the things that nonviolent communication recognizes is when there's big, strong emotions going on in us, it becomes very difficult to understand the other. That all of our attention is focused on taking care of those emotions. And we can be in a place where we don't even care, we're not even interested. They have other needs, great. They're the same as my needs, I don't care. Because I'm in so much pain myself. So one of the first things that nonviolent communication suggests is that we recognize and acknowledge and in some way honor or take care of whatever needs of ours are not being met by what's happening. So if that person has been doing certain actions, you know, what are the needs of mine that aren't met? Or they are promoting a certain way of doing something in our community that I'm worried about, or, you know, my brother's behaving in this way and it really leaves some really big unmet needs. I want to first be able to understand what are those needs and kind of honor them or take care of them, to recognize and acknowledge them. Otherwise, we may find it very difficult to be able to find that common ground because we're not interested in even looking for it. Excuse me, sorry. Does that resonate with anyone? Has others experienced that same thing? Maybe just a thumbs up or something or whatever, if that sounds familiar to you. Okay, thank you. So one of the first things we want to do is first identify our own unmet needs by whatever the situation is presenting. And so we're going to start to look at how do we do that. So first I want to invite you to think of a specific situation that you personally have experienced, you know, where it seemed like, you know, you and your friend, you and your brother or your sister, you know, whatever, had very, very, you know, polarized views or polarized ways of dealing with the situation. So take, you know, a moment to think of that, because we're going to use that for some practice. You know, for example, I have a very close friend of mine who has the opposite end of views around COVID and vaccinations than I do. And it was quite surprising to me at first, because so many things we are very much on the same page about. But so it could be something like that, you know, or it could be other things, you know. So think of that for a moment, because we're gonna use that to practice. And so one of the things that helps, the other thing we talked about how needs were empowering, that when we connect to them, you know, it's empowering because now we know what we're needing. So then we can better take care of ourselves. So that often gives a sense of relief or release. You know, even if we haven't yet taken care of them or found a way to take care of them, just our acknowledging of them can be helpful. And so that's also one of the ways that we can create more space in us to be willing to look for common ground with that other person, is if we can identify the needs of ours that are not met. It'll also, related to that, it'll help our emotions to come down, to calm down. Because part of that emotion is that we're thinking our needs are not going to get met. And if we don't have our needs met, then we don't have, you know, a wonderful life. Something important in our life is not going to be going well. And so identifying those needs can be a really helpful way of doing it. So we're gonna, in a minute, we're gonna break into pairs, and we're gonna support each other in identifying the needs that are not met by whatever our personal situation is. So in my example, what needs of mine would not be met, you know, by my friends' views around vaccinations and government taking control of our lives and those kinds of things, you know, which was more his perspective. What needs of mine would not be met by sharing those views, having those strategies of no vaccination, resisting the government, et cetera, not wearing masks, all those kind of things. What needs of mine would not be met? That's what we're going to be working on. And you'll do the same for yourselves in your paired groups. And the way we're going to do that is through deep listening. And we're going to do that in a very specific way. So I'm going to share my screen again because we're going to break into pairs, and one person is going to share their example and what it brings up in them. And the other person is going to listen, but in a very specific way. So in my example, I'd be sharing about, my friend and what a surprise it was and how scary or painful it is to have, this friend thinking, all these different views on vaccines that are worrisome to me. Okay. And again, it doesn't matter what the views on vaccines are or whatever. It's just a matter of we had very polar opposite views on what to do. And then I was struggling to see my friend as a friend any longer. Even though he's one of my closest friends. So let me share my screen here, and we're going to take a look at. Okay. So we can do this listening to our needs ourselves, but I find, especially if I don't have as much experience doing that, or even, for myself, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and there are still certain topics that they bring up so much strong emotion in me that I really need support to be able to help me to get to those needs. That it's really hard because the emotions are so strong. And so, yes, you can do this for yourself, but I thought, it's often easier to have that support. So one person's going to be the speaker, one person will be the listener. The speaker will be sharing, like I'd be, this friend, he believes this and this and about vaccines, and that's really terrifying to me because of this. I'll be talking like that. And then the listener, every 1 to 2 minutes, is going to do one of 3 things. One thing that they might do is after a minute or two, they would say a summary back of what they heard me say. So, Duke, I heard you say, this, and this, these 3 main points. I heard you say that, were worrying you or whatever about not taking vaccines or whatever it is. Okay, so that's one option that you can do. If it feels easier to you, a second thing is, rather than summarizing what you heard the speaker say, you can just say back, what's the most important thing that you heard them say? So rather than say, you said these 3 points, Duke, you would just say, it sounded like the main thing here was just, your real fear around if everyone did that and how it would impact, you and everyone around you that you care about. Something, whatever that main point is, the most important thing that you heard that speaker say. Or the third option, for those of you who maybe have a bit more experience with nonviolent communication, the third thing you can do is say back the feelings and needs that you heard that person say. So, wow, Duke, I heard you say that you're really worried, because you want, care for everybody and support of everybody to stay healthy. So I'm saying some feelings and I'm saying some needs. So whichever of those you feel more comfortable and at ease at, the speaker will speak for a minute, minute and a half, and then the listener would say back a summary. I heard you say this and this and this, and then the speaker will continue saying some more. And then again, another minute, minute and a half in, the listener will say back again, a summary or the most important thing, or if you can, the feelings and needs. And you will continue like that until either the time is up or until the speaker feels a sense of completion or relief or a shift in some way where it's like, yeah, that's the main stuff that I wanted heard. And when you reach that point, then together you're going to see if you can identify 2, 3, 4 needs of yours that were not met by whatever that person's saying or doing. So in my case, a good friend having a stand around, not taking vaccines and around government control and all that kind of stuff. What needs of mine are not met? Then you would switch. And, the one who is listening will now be the speaker, and the one who is speaking will now do this listening support for them. And the other thing I want to highlight is notice that in these three options, it does not say anything about any of these things. So please see if you cannot refrain from offering education or advice or trying to solve that person's problem. Well, Duke, if you would just do this, this, and this, I'm sure that would make everything fine with your friend. No, try to see, it's not that it's wrong, but right now we're trying to connect to the needs, and that will take us away from the needs rather than towards the needs. Okay, or telling your own story. I had a friend who was just like this, and boy, it was really painful. What a jerk he was, or whatever. No, try not to tell your own story, your own experience. Try not to ask any questions. No. So you said he wouldn't take a vaccine, but would he at least wear a mask? No, try to stay away from that. Just do the summary, and try not to offer any sympathy. Oh my God, yeah, he sounds like a big jerk. I can't believe he believes that kind of crap, or whatever. Try to just stay away from all of those things for now, and just do one of these three things right here. Okay. So let me just stop sharing.